Yeah. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. I can hardly lift this thing up. It weighs 100 weight. This is a
Yeah.
native tome that is available through Rocket 88, isn't it? They publish it, if I'm right. Rocket 88.
Yeah. Yeah.
I suppose the first question I've got for you is a rather obvious one, and that is, well, how did all this come about?
Well, it's basically just sort of well, for me, it's closure. For us, it was when after Dad's passing, we his his mum's house we had to put it on the market, and in the attic was just tons and tons of stuff that his mum had collected, not thrown away, such as postcards, his letters, and newspaper clippings, which we all thought was really interesting. Um, and as the family, at some point, because it's coming up to, obviously this 50th anniversary, all these things that we're putting out, and we were talking to Martin and about this coffee table book.
Yeah.
Uh, Not like a biography or anything such. It's basically just getting everyone who knew him, who inspired him, who was inspired by, and everyone got their chance to sort of say something about him, and put a collection together of his life. And I just thought it was a really cool idea, in a different way rather than a normal biography. Well, he's done one already, but I thought it was everyone just gets the chance to put their thing. So this is how it all came about. It's been a long time in the making, uh, to sort of wrap everything of his life together. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and there's some wonderful personal artifacts in there. These some photographs I've never seen before, postcards, as you say. It must have been a bit of an emotional wrench, I think, sifting through all this stuff.
It wasn't easy. It wasn't, and I wouldn't have been able to do. Time's a healer, and I think I wouldn't have been able to do it years ago. But I think at the same time, it was a process, and it helped. And it was nice. It was, I don't know what's the word really. Um, um, it took a long time to. I mean, we went through everything, and it was fun. It was funny and
Yeah,
sad and everything. It's been a while now because obviously it's been about 6 years.
yeah, it's
Uh,
amazing.
it's just and then you see things on YouTube and you hear the music, and it's fine now. It can deal with it all, but yeah, it's he sadly missed, but now I just look on the funny side of things, and the most things that I remember is just there was no bad. It was just he was just such a happy, funny bloke, and down to earth sort of guy.
Yeah.
But it was always about music. There was always music involved with everything. You
I
know.
mean, do you remember your sort of last meaningful conversation you had with Keith?
Wow. The last minute, yes. Well, we always planned. There was one memory, and I always say it's the most special memory of all. But many years ago, well, we left Nassau. We lived in Nassau in 75 to 1980 because I think it was tax reasons or something. But we went one morning. We woke up and went on this fishing boat. And we went way out, way out, way out, way out, and the sun was coming up, and all the fish were freaking out. And he loved fishing; it was his biggest thing. He actually wanted to retire, get a little cottage in Cornwall, and just be a fisherman. He
Okay.
just wanted to pack in. That was his last sort of thing. And that's what he really wanted to do. Um, and we always had a memory that we were talking about trying to do that again. But he was really supportive in my music as well.
Yeah.
um, and uh, and Ethan, my son,
Yeah.
giving him piano lessons, and was really inspired by his progress on the piano.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, 'cause I've seen your son play piano. He's on YouTube as well. He's doing very well, isn't he?
he's fantastic. He's 17 now, and he's at Northbrook College in Worthing Music College. And he's still doing it. He's now getting a bit more diverse into his music.
Yeah.
He's starting to listen to Radiohead and
Yeah.
doing all that stuff. And he's in a band called The Clap.
Okay. Okay. Why not?
Um, why not? Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
So, what was it like collaborating with Chris Welch? Is it Chris Welch? It is, isn't he? Who actually wrote a lot. Um,
Yeah.
is he a lovely chap to work with, or is he an old curmudgeon?
No, no. I mean, I haven't been around him that much, but we spoke on the phone, and we did a Zoom as well, and he has a lot of insight into all of. This is why he was the perfect choice to do this,
Yeah.
because he has a massive insight, and he knew Dad as well, really well. Unfortunately, I don't know him that well. But I thought he was the perfect choice to do it. He was recommended, and we thought yes, he was the guy because he knew a lot about all of that stuff, in that era.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I've got an interview with him, I think, in a couple of days' time. I want to take
Okay.
him to, I want to take him to task for the mean things he said about Jethro Tull's Passion Play in 1973.
Oh, really? I don't know any of that. I don't know anything about that. Unfortunately,
Um,
I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Jethro Tull yet, but one day, hopefully.
yeah, absolutely. What was I mean, as a child, what was the first intimation you had of your father's sort of superstar status?
I mean, I never really looked at it. I do get asked. I have been asked that question, but I never really sort of think that. I think if you sort of go up to like you're 15, your dad's doing one thing like running a restaurant, and then all of a sudden it goes up, that must be quite interesting, I think. Then, but when you're born, I 1970, they were quite happening by then.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought it was quite probably unusual to be going on a Concorde traveling to New York, and probably going being thought this was probably a bit interesting.
Yeah.
But um but that's but uh, that that's the only memories. I did say this before in the book that the memories I remember being in a big car, and leaving a concert when he was playing, because that's what his job was, and people were banging on the windows, and I
Yeah,
was freaked out because I thought they were attacking us.
yeah, yeah.
I thought that he played so bad and he was terrible that I thought he probably needs to pack this in
Yeah.
and do another job. But there was lots of moving around, and I was I wasn't around all the time with him. So there was a long times that I didn't see him.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't remember too much.
Well, it must be an odd environment for a child, I suppose. But then I suppose maybe if you're brought up in it, you just accept it as the norm.
Exceptionally lucky and privileged to have been part of this
Oh,
journey.
of course,
Uh,
of course.
I don't take it for granted in the slightest. And especially when I see all the nice, uh, feedback messages from people. I remember, when his passing, and then loads of people were putting loads of messages on the, and everything was just really positive and nice. And I thought, this is so great. And I started replying to each one, and which was a mistake, because what happened then is people would come back, and I'm not good with Facebook or this
Mhm.
sort of tech stuff, and if you don't reply back to someone, they start getting really pissed off. And I was like, what? And then that's not what I meant. Oh, whoa, who do you think you are, not getting back to me? And that's why I just packed it all in.
Yeah, yeah,
But everyone's been really nice, supportive. Yeah. I don't take it for granted. I'm extremely I look back in his music. I'll be honest with you. I don't like every single song.
yeah.
I'm a fan of the Nice and probably the first 3 or 4 albums, I would say.
You'll say you're not a fan, or you are a fan.
I'm a fan. I like the first 3 or 4 albums. I
Yeah,
think. Then after Works Volume 2, there were some interesting pieces.
yeah,
And then I thought Black Moon was okay. Here's the thing. So they were really, Dad was a composer forefront, foremost.
yeah,
Carl Gregg was really had the most beautiful voice. His acoustic guitar. There's no one that sounds like Gregg.
yeah,
Even today, there's no one that sounds like him. I swear to you. And the three of them were although they probably weren't the best of buddies and didn't really hang out all the time. I never really saw them around the house that much.
yeah,
Uh, but when they got together, they were clever in that respect. I think after you know, when the record company wanted them to start making those sort of 3-minute singles, you know, like Genesis would cross over and do that. I think they
Yeah.
struggled with that,
Yeah.
with Love Beach, obviously.
Yeah.
They were trying to become a band that they weren't. And I
Yeah.
always loved Dad on the Hammond. He was, you know, you know, when he played with Oscar Peterson on Honky Tonk tune, and you know, at home he'd always be listening to jazz music and classical music, and it was just such a privilege to hear him playing outside my bedroom at night. I would hear him playing some of the pieces that are now on the albums, like the Dreamer, his solo stuff. Um, you know, when I would play gigs, he would come up and throw me off and start playing solos and wear people out. You know, there was a gig because I was a huge Doors, I still am a huge Doors fan.
Yeah.
In California once, and there was a Harley Davidson Love Ride, hundreds of Harley Davidsons. I think Larry Hagman, Lorenzo, what was his name? Lorenzo Lamas, Peter Fonda. They were headlining this massive Harley Davidson ride into this Hell's Angels camp, and right at the back of the field was Robbie Krieger playing Doors songs.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just like, you don't understand. For me, I'm in this sort of like field, and this fucking Robbie Krieger up there playing. Was singing the Jim Morrison lyrics, and the Allman Brothers kids were up there, and there was an organ up there, and honestly, there were about 15 people watching. Everyone was at the back of the field looking at all the motorbikes, and I was just sitting there, just blown. And I got up after. In the interval, my dad went up to Robbie and said, "Do you mind if my son can come up and play Soul Kitchen? Because I can play Soul Kitchen."
Yeah.
Went, yeah, and I got up there and just looking at Robbie, and he goes, "You know how it goes, kid." And I'm start playing the lick on my legs. So anyway, when the solo comes, Dad just throws me off and just plays for 20 minutes.
Oh, wow. Oh, fantastic. And Raymond Zurich, I mean, what a musician he was.
Yeah, I got to meet him as well. I worked at West LA Music in LA for a couple of years, and he came in once with his wife, and I gave him my CD to him with the Soul Kitchen, and so I felt like a bit of a full circle. It was good.
How do you feel talking about the Doors? How do you feel about that idea of Iggy Pop replacing Jim Morrison? Because they went through that period, didn't they, where Iggy and Ray Manzarek, but I think Ray thought Iggy was a little bit too untamed.
Yeah, I read the book. I remember reading about that afterwards. He did do that. Yeah. I never heard what it was like, but that must have been quite crazy because the stories I read on Iggy Pop. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know Raymond Zurich was saying in the book I just read that he was kind of attracted to that Dionysian sort of quality that he had that Jim Morrison had.
That's
but
probably
Iggy Pop was just a little bit too out there, shall we say. I mean, he was doing crazy things on stage, but I'm not sure.
He's still alive.
Oh yeah, he's one of those people. I'm absolutely flabbergasted that he's still going. To be honest with you.
Yeah.
When you were growing up, did you have much interaction with Greg? Any memories of Greg Lake and Carl Palmer?
The only memories that I have with Carl when he was in Tenerife, we went to Tenerife once and we drove up to his house and spent a day with him. I don't really have any memories of Carl, so I can't say anything. Greg, with me, it was always just lovely with me. When I saw him, I played the piano once, and he actually showed a real interest and said, "Oh, I didn't know you could play." And not like my dad, but I was tinkering. And I remember when my dad was ill with a stomach thing, he was in hospital. I can't remember, he had a cyst removed or something. He rung me up and just says, "Anything you need, I'll be there to help you out." And yeah, I mean, although maybe Dad and Greg didn't really get on all the time, but I always remember him as such a lovely, lovely person. I honestly do. Yeah.
And as you say, one of those most, especially when he was younger, absolutely remarkable voice. That voice on that debut King Crimson album is just sublime, isn't it?
I love King Crimson. Yeah. I've loved King Crimson. I've seen some of the old stuff, and I've got some old videos that I've actually had transferred, so I don't lose them. There's one. There's a black and white one. They were playing at. They were racing cars around Donington, or somewhere. A race, and I don't know. He's just got that voice that you just. don't hear it. I haven't heard anyone sound like him ever.
No, absolutely. How do you feel about
He
this?
was,
Sorry, go on.
no, 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 go on.
How do you feel about this tour that, I mean, Carl Palmer's going on tour at the moment with a kind of an ELP experience where he's got these two video screens and
I
he's playing
heard
drums.
this.
Have you seen that? I mean, how do you feel about that?
That was interesting. I'm glad you put it because we were talking about that last night. Of course, there's nothing that we can say no to, but it's his thing. But how do I feel about it? I haven't seen it. I've heard reports that it's going really well,
Okay.
and the fans are enjoying it. I haven't heard anything negative. What do I feel about? I know it's not. I remember they were talking about holograms many years ago, but that's going to be too expensive, and that
Yeah.
would have been that'd have been too much. I mean, let's face it, he's not playing stadiums, so you know
Yeah.
it's. But you know, but Paul McCartney did it with John Lennon, didn't he? Recently at the Glastonbury, didn't he? He did a thing like
Well,
that.
he's been doing what's that song, Beatles song from the Let It Be album? I've Got a Feeling. And when you get the
Yes,
Lennon part, he it's played on the screen, and he turns around
that's it.
and so
That's
it's
the
just
one. Yeah.
quite moving, really.
Um. Yeah. Basically, it's the Albert Hall gig in '97, I think, when they played at the Albert Hall, the Black Moon tour. He's
Okay.
using those clips there, and he's doing his. So his band, as far as I'm aware of, he has a guitar player and bass player. He doesn't have a keyboard player. So when he's playing Tarkus and stuff like that, they're all doing with the guitars. So when he comes on and he's playing with the when the screen comes up, I
Hmm.
mean, I've seen a very little bit on YouTube, but it was very very little bit, and what I saw, it looked good. It looked
Yeah.
really great. The crowd looked like they were getting into it. It was quite a big area where they were. I'm not sure. I think no. I think it was Philadelphia. I think it was Philadelphia where I saw it on YouTube. But all I've heard is good things. Um, so if how do I feel about it? I think it's great. If the fans want to see it, I haven't heard any bad feedback, so that's a good thing.
How do you feel about the way your father's sound changed, as he merged from the nice to ELP? Because I rather like that organ Hammond sound that he had with the nice, really. I'm just wondering how you feel about some of the rig he was using in the 70s.
Loved it. Are you kidding? I mean, the GX1. The GX1 is actually one of the first keyboards I started playing on when I was a kid.
Mm.
He was a pioneer of all of that stuff. I mean, I'm at the moment I'm working with these DJ guys in Brighton and all sorts of produced. To get some of that stuff now it's hard. I don't remember him being a real big Fender Rhodes player,
Yeah.
but the Steinway piano, the Hammond, the GX1, the CS80. He had all the stuff there that he needed. The Moog, I mean, right here I've got one of his last keyboards that he had, a MIDI Mini, which is
Yeah.
he had the Lucky Man thing on it. See that?
Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
John Peel, of course, said I think he never forgave Keith Emerson for leaving the nice and
no,
ELP. I mean, I think he famously said Emerson, Lake, and Palmer were a waste of talent and electricity.
electricity. I remember that. No, I remember he wasn't a fan. I remember reading that. Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
I don't think it was just ELP. I think it was the whole prog thing in
right,
general. He
right,
felt it was all kind of pretentious piffle, I think is how he described it once. And
okay,
of course, he
yeah.
was a big champion of the new wave and punk scene that emerged from sort of 76 onwards.
Well,
I'm just
that's
wondering how your dad felt about John Peel's remarks, or do you just think they were funny?
always found the things like that funny.
They
Always
were
found
funny
things.
as well.
In fact, I'll tell you what. When about in '77, if I can remember correctly, when they came back from America's, I mean, Dad was in Nassau at this time when this whole movement around 76, 77 was happening. So he was kind of really out of touch.
Mhm.
And he never really was in the game with all of that stuff. He was never trying to sort of set that sort of thing. That wasn't his thing. So when the Sex Pistols all came in, I remember there was lots of reviews how he was slacking Dad off and ELP off. Funny thing is, they turned out to be really good friends. I think John Lyon was living in Santa Monica, just down the road from Dad, and I think they would hook up every now and again and have a drink and have a laugh.
Yeah.
But one time in Camden, I think it was around that 77, it was the World's End, I believe it's called, the pub.
Yeah.
And the Sex Pistols were in there and ELP were in there. And I think there was a little skirmish going on, or shouting, probably from the Sex Pistols over to them. I think they probably left. Yeah. But no, he always found it really funny. Yeah, as far as I can remember.
Any thoughts on Love Beach? I mean, what was going on with Love Beach?
So Love Beach was like, I think they were put into that. They probably had a one last album deal with, who was it, Atlantic or Atlantic, I think it was. And they were trying to be commercial, you know. It looked like they were trying to be the Bee Gees on the front of the cover, but they had to start coming up with those 3.5 minute songs, I believe they were told to start doing, which wasn't them. I think they should have just stuck to their guns and just kept. What I would have loved is them to just gone back to getting going raw. I always wanted them to. I wanted them to get off those synths and stuff, and I just wanted them to get back on the Hammond and the Moog and just sort of getting a bit more raw. That's what I would have loved, a bit more. But you know, towards the end, you know, he always used it. He always used those keyboards and stuff. But Love Beach wasn't. You know, there's a couple of all right songs on there. And in fact, you know, when you hear a few people say they also say it's not that bad. But the cover is pretty much one of the worst covers for them.
Going for their minds with that cover? I mean, Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah, they must have been high, or hey, I've got.
Somebody must have signed off on that.
Someone must have signed off on it. I can't tell you that one. I mean, if you take that one from Trilogy or Brain Salad Surgery, and then you put Love Beach next to it, it's like criminal.
I mean, my favorite ELP album is, I think, probably the debut album. I think that's Take a Pebble, Knife Edge.
Absolutely.
Lucky Man was, I think, probably just a throwaway, but I love what your father did at the end of that song. He adds a kind of a majesty to it. It's fantastic, I think. I really loved that whole album. Do you have any interesting stories about how any of these songs came together, or were you way too young for all that, I suppose?
I was way too young for that. I wasn't around when he was writing these tunes. I mean, with Lucky Man, I've just done a remake of it, which will come out next year. I've put loads of artists together. It was done in lockdown as a bit of fun, and so that was one of my favorite songs. I know that Lucky Man was basically it was one track. Well, we all know the story about that one, don't we? He wrote it when he was 12. And they had some time to throw it at the end of the studio because Dad was late, and they threw it on, and he did the solo at the end of it, and it took one take, and he wanted to do it again, and he absolutely hated that solo.
Did he really?
Yeah,
I think it really makes us. The song I like the song, but I think that bit at the end elevates it from. It risks becoming a bit twee, I think, and then that solo at the end kind of gives it something else. I think
that sound, yes, and when they played it live, you know, the floor would rock. You know, it was unbelievable.
What's your favorite composition by your father?
Oh boy, Tarkus, Creole Dance, although that wasn't written by him, but I love him when he plays Creole Dance. It's a great song. His concertos, his piano concertos. Yeah. Also, I like The Dreamer as well.
Yeah.
There's too many. I don't know. There's lots.
I bet there is. Yeah. I mean, what's the best piece of musical advice he ever gave you, do you think?
He was just very positive and supportive towards me when playing, and just keep doing it. It was just very supportive. In the barn at Stonehill, where all his gear was set up, when I started playing, I'd get friends over, and we would jump on all the kit. And I remember there were these 2 Neumann microphones that was for his Steinway to play. I think they were about $2,000.
Yeah.
And we found, my friends picked them out, and we had to mic up the drum kit. So we put one under the snare drum and one in the bass drum, and we just went to sound check, went pop pop, and they were blown. So they're having to tell him that musical vice, musical vice. He was just very supportive. Just keep going, keep going, enjoy what you do. Yeah.
Do you have any memories, or how did your father feel about some of his contemporaries like Rick Wakeman and Tony Banks and people like that? Did he feel there was a rivalry there, or not?
You know what? I think at the beginning, when I first heard about Rick Wakeman and yes, all that stuff, I thought there was at the beginning. Personally, I thought there was, because Rick Wakeman is just unbelievably talented. He's such a nice guy. I remember the one time I met them both. We were in Morton's in Soho Square in London, and this probably would have been about 98. And there was a rumor that the two of them were going to go on tour together.
Okay.
And I think this is why we all sat down. I remember I sat at this table, and I'm just sitting with Dad and Rick, and behind me was what's his name? David Crosby from Crosby, Stills. Okay. I remember seeing him in the back of the corner there, but he didn't say hello, or we didn't come over or anything like that. But I would just remember sitting there thinking, man, I'm at this table with two of the coolest, biggest keyboard players. And unfortunately, the tour didn't happen. But actually, we're seeing Rick in December in Worthing Assembly Hall. He's on tour at the moment.
Yeah, he's doing his grumpy Christmas thing, isn't he?
Yeah, that's right. As far as him listening to music around the house, I don't ever remember him listening to Rick and Tony Banks or any of his contemporaries listening to him. He was always listening to Dave Brubeck and Oscar Peterson. I mean, he really was. He really was. Always classical and jazz in the car or at home all the time.
Okay.
Oh, I remember I bought him Blue Turtles, his first solo album, which he really loved. I remember that was my first CD I ever gave him, because he was really into that.
Yeah.
Simon, great. Yeah.
Seems a bit of a silly question, but I was going to ask you, what is your favorite ELP album and why?
When you get a favorite album, it's where you are when you listen to it for the first time, I guess, and the memories and who you're with, that and just the whole experience. Because when we were in the country at Stonehill and my friends came over, and I never always thought that my friends would be liking them, but I wasn't showing it off, but we would be playing pool and we would just stick on Trilogy, Pictures, Tarkus. And when we're playing it, and when you're 17, so this, at 1987, and you're playing it, and you're all getting off on it, that's pretty cool. So like with you, Take a Pebble, From the Beginning, Tarkus, and basically really the Nice, all that stuff was my favorite stuff.
Yeah. Well,
I love Hammond.
Yeah, well, you've kind of preempted my last question. I was going to ask you what you thought about the Nice, and which one do you prefer, your father's work in the Nice or your father's work in ELP?
I mean, it was always such a joy to hear him playing. But my heart and everything is right from the early stuff, even when he was doing PP Arnold, right up to which I've seen PP. She's lovely.
Yeah.
Still going, still doing her thing.
She is, yeah. I saw her supporting, we're going back a few years now, to the 90s. I saw her supporting Ocean Colour Scene.
Yes.
She duos with them on one of their records. And
the guitar player was playing Shoreham down at the Rope Tackle, where we're very near. And we went to see PP Arnold down there. And the guitar player, I don't know his name, from Ocean Colour Scene, was playing with.
But he's been getting about a bit, because I saw him playing with the Specials. The Special support the Stones, and I'm pretty sure that was him on guitar as well. So he's probably a bit of a hired gun these days as well, I suspect.
I didn't see the Specials last year. I think they were playing in Maidstone. I nearly went to go and see them. Um, yeah, but they were my favorite albums. Yeah,
No, no, good choices. Absolutely great choices.
yeah,
So as I said, this wonderful book, I can hardly lift it up.
yeah.
Is when is it? Is this actually released? Is this available to buy now?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I've done an unboxing video of this on my channel already. I will put a purchasing link for this just below this video. Um,
Lovely.
you don't have to go for the humongous big one.
You
What
can also just get a standard one. There's two.
the classic edition, I think, is the standard one.
Classic edition. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'd like to thank you so much for your time and for sharing with me some thoughts about your wonderful and talented father. We all miss him, of course, in the prog community. And have a great day.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for this. Thank you
My
very much.
pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.